Today I would like to talk about some of the mistakes I've made in monastic life and what I've learned from them. As living beings controlled by afflictions, of course, we're going to make mistakes, and the same is true of monastics. It can be very helpful to look at our attitude towards making mistakes. For example, to begin noticing, well, how do I react when I make a mistake? What happens? What kind of self-talk and judgments come up when I make mistakes? Am I defensive, argumentative? Do I make excuses or try to blame others? Do I become angry or dissolve in self-shame? What happens? Do I have a tendency to think I need to be perfect? I think that's probably one of the set of questions that will come up. To what degree am I able to accept my mistakes and learn from them? Self-acceptance has been a very important tool that I've been developing here at the Abbey. The good news for Dharma practitioners is that we can purify our mistakes. We can do that daily using the 4 opponent powers, prostrations to 35 Buddhas, Vajrasattva practice, etc. And as monastics, we can also purify and restore our monastic precepts in the bi-monthly posada, confession and restoration. So here at the Abbey, novices and shiksamanas confess any broken guidelines or precepts to Venerable Children or one of the senior bhikshunis. And the bhikshunis themselves confess to each other in a circle before reciting our precepts together. That's probably a very unique way of doing the posada. I have found this practice to be very healing and transformative. Confessing out loud to our teacher or to seniors or to our peers supports us to drop any pretension of good qualities that we don't yet have, and to limit the deceit around hiding our faults. And that's necessary in the monastic life. It's been very humbling to become much more aware of thoughts that come up when I'm preparing for my confession, like, nah, I'm not going to say that one. Or, how can I say this in a way that will minimize the embarrassment that I feel? I think that's knowing laughter. And when I notice thoughts like that, I know immediately, just say it straight. Just put it out there and confess it and stop the pretending, usually. This morning I thought I would share a few mistakes that I've made along the way in hopes that it might be helpful. As many of you know, I received ordination in 2001 before Venerable Children had started this beautiful abbey. I knew that it was a dream of hers, but it had not, the causes and conditions hadn't come together for it yet. And so I spent my first year as a monastic in Dharamsala. It was great fun. I took a lot of teachings at the library and other places. I did some retreats. I went on pilgrimage. I was mostly based at Tushita in Dharamsala, and there was a loose group of monastics there. Luckily, there was a resident monastic who kind of made sure that we came to morning and evening practice, but that was about the extent of our commitment there. And in hindsight, I see that my first year as a monastic was more like a travel holiday, more of a Dharma adventure. It was a lot of fun. I have good memories. Probably a lot of things I still need to purify from that. So it wasn't an ideal situation for a new monastic. If we contrast that to how someone begins ordained life here at the Abbey now, they're supported by their ordaining teacher, a daily schedule, lots of teachings and monastic rituals, and surrounded by many role models to help them establish good Dharma habits from day one. Actually, even before day one as they're in their training. So there's a big difference. So that was the first big mistake. In Dharamsala, I met a group of Australians at a 2-month Lamrim course with Yangtze Rinpoche, and that's where I first learned about the basic program that FPMT runs. And so I asked Venerable if I could go to Australia and attend this program, and my memory is that you said yes. I wish she had said, come back when I call you, much stronger. Anyway, I thought I would go and participate in this program for 5 years and come right back, and it didn't work out that way. I ended up staying there for 14 years for various reasons. One of the ways that things were set up there at this particular center was that everyone had a private room. And for a couple of years, I did live in communal housing, but the rest of the time I was in either a self-contained hut or the last 5 years, I had a 2-bedroom house all to myself. I thought the Buddhas had given me a blessing. But now that I've come to the Abbey and I see how rich it is to live closely in community and also, have the opportunity from time to time to share a room with somebody, there's so much to learn in that situation. So again, it was a bit of a luxury, but one that didn't really serve me, I think, in the long run. Another thing that where I stumbled along the way is that while I was in Australia, I built up several strong identities that I've been dismantling since I came to the Abbey. The first one that I'll mention is I saw myself as a Dharma teacher. I started teaching the Dharma before I had the appropriate control over afflictions, let's put it that way, or the necessary, or I don't know how you would measure that, but anyway, I still had a lot of afflictions. I still have a lot of afflictions. But even though I like to think that I helped a few people in those opportunities, in the first few years, I remember feeling very sincere in sharing the Dharma. After that, the praise knocked me over. Yeah. And supported other afflictions in my mind. And so Venerable makes a very clear distinction that we may be in the role of teaching the Dharma, but she often quotes His Holiness as saying that we are always a Dharma practitioner first and foremost. We may have an opportunity to share the Dharma, teach the Dharma, but first and foremost, we see ourselves as a student. So that's been very helpful. It's worth a note of warning that as monastics, we can find so many ways to fill in that aching hole in the heart, and often they have to do with 8 worldly concerns. Even in a very good setting like this, it's still possible. I had the amazing good fortune and karma to study with 2 Larampa Geshis during my time in Australia. The pitfall was that I began to see myself as an advanced student. After all, I had studied for many years. This gave rise to a wee bit of arrogance that I brought with me here to the Abbey. Just ask any of the residents, they'll affirm this. Still working on that one. I also identified myself as a senior nun. I was living among other novice nuns, and by default, I just lived there a long time, so I became a senior nun. And when I came to the Abbey, of course, most of the nuns here are fully ordained, and even though some of them have been ordained for just a few years, they are senior to me. They're still senior to me. And so I find myself sitting towards the back of the room or the end of the line. And that's been a very challenging practice. A very good one, for sure. I had forgotten that, these titles that we take on, senior, junior, whatever, they're conditional, aren't they? They're causal, and they have causes and conditions. So that's another one that I'm still working on. Another opportunity to work with arrogance. And instead of going on, I could go on and on, but instead I'd like to just highlight some of the things that I really appreciate about the situation here at the Abbey. And that's not to say that, there's so many different opportunities for monastics to choose in terms of where we live and how we engage in our ordained life, but some of the things that have been so beneficial for me in coming here. One is the emphasis on ethical conduct, and that creates so much safety personally. It helps to guard our minds from afflictions. There's safety for community members as well as the larger community. The people that visit, there's a sense of safety in terms of how they will be received and how we'll treat them. And also, it's true for our online community as well, I think. So that's one very big advantage of living in a strong community like this. As a result, there's a lot of genuine kindness among the community members. They're actively working, sincerely working on their minds, our minds. It's not just lip service here. It can't be. You'll be called out if it is. Another advantage is there's a lot of humility in this community that really touches me. I remember one of the first reviews that I did while Venerable was away. And here in this community, everyone comes to reviews or teachings that the community gives which is not the case in other places where, hey, if it's not the Geshe, I'm not coming. And I remember almost being knocked over with how receptive the nuns were, how present, how supportive they were in listening to what I had to say. I appreciate the emphasis in seeing the identities that we've built up over our lives, and Venerable's humor and insightful teachings that help us to begin dismantling those identities that just trip us up. I mean, that's what we signed up for, is to dismantle those. And it is easy to build identities as a monastic, so we must be careful. Also, not handling money removes a lot of distraction from the mind. Previously, as a Dharma teacher, I received a stipend for that teaching and also offerings. And it's so easy to, mixed motivations can easily creep into the mind when that's the case. Also adhering to the daily schedule here, eating what is offered and not shopping, dropping preferences, all those things make for such a conducive monastic life. Also, doing the bi-monthly Posada confessions and restoration, as well as the rains retreat, I've been amazed how powerful those ceremonies or those rituals are. It astounds me how that brings a sense of communion, a sense of harmony within the community. It's like a reset button that we get to set every 2 weeks and also once a year with the rains retreat. And also here at the Abbey, we actually have we're encouraged to actually leave the home life. It's so easy to become ordained and hang on to the home life. Hang on to your car, your apartment, your cell phone, whatever it is, your family. But here, I have found it very supportive to clean up lingering attachment with family and friends to a larger degree. And that helps to really keep our attention and focus on the monastic life and really the larger spiritual goals that we have. So those are just a few things that I thought to share this morning. I find that when I can acknowledge my mistakes with acceptance and self-compassion, then they no longer have a hold over me. And so I think it's very healthy to accept our mistakes, confess them, share them with others, learn from them, most importantly. So I hope that's helpful.